Hello, welcome back. I'm Deborah Shalette Wilson,
I'm Kathy McCommon.
And I'm Andrew Delfs.
and together we're the School of Soul. In our last video, we got into looking at the first stage of human growth and development psychologically and mentally with minerals and rocks. And in this session, we're going to explore the wonderful world of the vegetative stage.
The vegetable stage of development, second stage.
Second stage. There you go.
And what I love about vegetables is, I'm a gardener, so I love the metaphor of plants. And like a plant, vegetables have a lovely appearance, what's above ground, and they have an underground, which is the exact opposite of whatever shape is above ground. Whatever the appearance is, their underground, their unconscious is the opposite. So you have people that appear to be nice, caring, generous people, and the underground is nice, not caring, not generous in any way. And that's one thing when you know a vegetable, is that they will have this split. Whatever the appearance is, the unconscious is the exact opposite.
You know, you're telling that analogy there, and it comes to mind about a story a family story about a bodybuilder. Now, bodybuilders are very beautiful. They are tanned, they're chiseled, there's not a hair on their body. They are there for show. But this particular bodybuilder, when you got underneath into the root system, it was hard, like the mineral stage. There was the emotions were locked up, spirituality was locked up, compassion was locked up, and that is where you get into narcissism, right?
Right. And the vegetable, unlike the mineral, has some movement. You know, think about a plant moving in the wind, and the plant will grow toward the sun, but the roots are still stuck in the dirt of the mineral stage. You'll always find a mineral in the unconscious of someone in the vegetable stage of development.
And are we kind of relating this dirt to the trauma? They're stuck in the dirt of their trauma.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And the trauma is largely unconscious. A typical thing about vegetables is they'll have just some extreme symptoms sometimes, and they'll say, oh gosh, it was all because of that one event when I was 6 years old, when a babysitter touched me inappropriately. And it's like this overwhelming, they're drug addicted, they beat their spouse, whatever, overwhelming symptoms, and they put it on something so small, and they don't have the ability to see that tiny thing couldn't cause the enormity of their symptoms. So, but vegetable stagers have stories. They just love stories, and their stories don't make a lot of sense, but it makes sense to them because it keeps them from dealing with their trauma. They just want something that'll make them comfortable. Their stories have kept them alive because they're comforting stories, but they won't get past the vegetable stage in a story. They have to embrace reality.
So they're not healing.
Now, would you say that also in the vegetable stage, just to clarify what you said, is that they are the best storytellers?
Oh, they can be marvelous storytellers. That is one of their positive traits for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're involved with someone who's in the vegetable state, then you need to realize that their stories are stories, true stories.
And that's how we evolve a vegetable stager, by helping them to see that their stories are holding them back. Like, for example, I'm a happy person. I'm always happy, happy, happy. You help them to see the times when they're not happy. And actually, there are times when it's useful not to be happy. At a funeral, someone dies, terrible things going on in your country. There's a time to be upset about things. When people treat you badly, there's a time to stand up and do something about it. That help them to see that the whole of their humanity is a good thing in its right time, place, and circumstances.
But trauma covers that up. Yeah. It reminds me of some gardening that I've been doing, and I mentioned it in one of the other videos. But it's these green vines were just, I mean, they were very beautiful, but they had all these little prickly things on them. And but also amongst those vines were some beautiful ferns, and they weren't prickly, and I would have liked to have kept them, but unfortunately they were all connected together. And so in order to get rid of the vines, I had to get rid of all of it. And so to me, the vines were like a trauma, and that it just kind of covered over the beauty, the other beautiful things that were there. And so sometimes that's what trauma does. It covers up other things within us that need an expression, and especially our soul kind of keeps us from being able to listen and hear our soul to help us grow and develop in the world.
And when vegetables raise children, it's all about appearances, looking good, sounding good, apparently feeling good, thinking the right things, positive things. This whole positive movement where everyone has to be positive, that's a typical vegetable stage. Only being positive is to counteract the only negative that's in their unconscious mind. When there's a time and place for every part of us, there's a time to be positive, there's a time to be negative, particularly if you're in relationship with a mineral stager, when it's not a pleasant experience and they need negativity in order to do some budging. Because if you're always positive with them, how are they going to know that they're not okay?
Yeah, no more beatings. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've got to show some negativity to them recreating their traumas.
Yeah. Instead, when people get into the positive, it's making excuses for their behavior, and it keeps you stuck in that relationship.
Can you say more about that?
Well, with domestic violence, I mean, I've experienced that, and I work with women who've experienced domestic violence. And of course, there's a lot of belief systems that get into that, as well as how you're supposed to, stand by your man, and if he's upset, you did something wrong, so you got to fix it. But all of those belief systems, when we play them out, they don't hold that other person accountable for their behavior. So that really, in a way, we collude. We collude unconsciously, but still we're supporting that behavior to continue by our allowing ourselves to stay in that relationship. And I think I know for me, when I when I left that relationship, I realized that I wasn't a victim as much as what other people were saying at the time. Yes, he did do things that they hurt me, but I also stayed. So I looked at my responsibility in the situation. It wasn't just him doing it all by himself. I, had a piece in it, and I owned that. I owned my part in the deal, and changed.
And that's one way to know a vegetable stager, because they don't take responsibility. Typically, it gets projected because they see the part of themselves, the appearance, that's looking good. And they don't see the unconscious that's brutalizing others as they were brutalized, and that gets projected.
Yes.
So they see other people doing what they themselves are doing.
Yeah, and that's what, I heard from him, and I hear from other women that I've worked with. He's always telling me it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault. So but then the other side of that is taking too much responsibility. So,
yes,
I was taking too much responsibility. He was taking none. And when I could embrace all of that, then it's like I'm responsible for my part, but other people are responsible for what they're doing. And I'm going to have a choice if I don't, about what they're doing or not doing, and, either stay in the relationship or go on down the road. Some people you just have to love from afar.
Would you also say that the vegetable stage could also be likened to the infant stage?
Yes. The vegetable is the wounded infant. So the infant was not acceptable growing up. All the trauma taught him or her that I'm not okay. So the child morphs into a non-human stage of development and splits in their consciousness. And a typical way this is done, and I said this in one of the other videos, is boys are taught that their feminine side is not okay. Not okay. So that goes into the unconscious mind, and they become a vegetable in that area. And girls are taught their masculine side, not okay. So that masculine side goes into the unconscious, and they become a vegetable in that area.
Yeah, and so therefore, a lot of times women don't know how to protect themselves.
Right. They don't know how to bring up that masculine part of themselves.
Yeah.
To stand up, to be strong, to assert what needs to be done.
And again, because we deal a lot with beliefs, there's the belief that women are supposed to always be nice, that men and women have bought into. And so if a woman is having, she's having to wade through that belief of I'm supposed to be nice, but I'm being beaten, and it's not okay to be, I need to not be nice here, but so there, I think it create that something like that would create an inner conflict.
So any extreme, rigid extreme, like niceness, or there's always that not niceness, that partners in relationship, they so often find their unconscious in their relationship partner. Sooner or later, a marriage, you get to know that.
Say that again, Anne, a little bit louder. I want the audience to hear what you just said.
A vegetable in a relationship so often marries someone who somehow represents their unconscious part, or sooner or later, like I'm thinking of one woman, she came from an alcoholic family. She was not going to marry an alcoholic. She was absolutely adamant. She married a man who didn't drink. Within 5 or 10 years of the relationship, he was an alcoholic. So bringing up all that unconscious material that was acted out. Now, that could be a positive thing, to become aware of what's unconscious, all that unconscious trauma. But so often a typical vegetable goes on to someone who has a better appearance. And again, the relationship starts out well when they're dealing only in appearances, but sooner or later, the unconscious material comes to the surface.
That reminds me of when I worked for Department of Human Services, that didn't seem too humane. I looked at I was one of these people that I read the policy and procedure manual because I want to make sure that, I'm doing what I need to be doing and I'm being responsible. And so I was reading this policy book about one of the programs, and it sounded really great. And it was, about being able to go in to work with families in their homes and, to help them deal with some of the issues that were going on. And when I called to find out about it, they said, oh, well, we really don't have that in place. It's just written down. We don't have the funding for it. And I was just taken aback by it. Looks good. It looked great. It sounded great, but it isn't real.
Yes.
Or like these big fancy buildings. Why do we need to have big fancy buildings? Because they look so good and then crap goes on inside? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Another reflection of how the stages of development is reflected in our organizations and even in our building structures.
Yep. What happened? Somehow we got kicked off.
I know. That was good.
I know.
That was good. Okay, there we are. I guess we were still, you might have to cut that part out.
No problem. Good.
Because I think is it still? Yeah, it is. Okay, a little technical glitch there.
Okay, so as Anne was, or Deborah was talking about big buildings and that they look beautiful on the outside, but what's going on the inside. So whatever's going on in the human realm is going to be mirrored out into our reality. It's going to be mirrored out in our organizations, in our science, in our buildings, in our homes. Whatever is going on inside here, you can rest assured we can see it out in the real world.
And to know a vegetable is to know that they're lost in a story with rigid roles, and they try to force you into the roles they're comfortable with. And if you don't go willingly, they can get quite rough trying to push you there. And as nice as they can seem to be, if you confront them, that underground is going to surface, and they can get pretty nasty pretty quickly.
Well, we do have our dark side.
We all do.
And the inner child has a dark side. It's not always happy.
And the whole thing is to make our dark side conscious, so we know when to use our dark side.
It's not about getting rid of it. It's about embracing it.
Yes.
It's embracing all of our humanity. Because unless you acknowledge something, you can't do anything about it. You're just going to stay stuck in it.
And because vegetables insist on their nice appearance, they don't have that ability, and the dark side runs them. It runs rampant in their unconscious and gets them into so much trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think to me, we can. It's pretty clear to see that playing out in our world today.
It is.
And that, I guess you could say that's the bad news. The good news is, though, it doesn't have to stay that way, and we each individually have a piece of it, of the action of making that transformation, beginning with ourselves and then sharing that with each other.
And one way to do that is not to fall for all the stories.
And that's difficult because you're going to see stories in the news. You're going to see stories told about stories. So stories are rampant right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
And don't fall for the rigid character roles, because remember, every person has everything inside themselves. It's a matter of they're conscious of every part, and are they employing it for human evolution?
Mm-hmm. So it's time to get on board this soul train.
Yes,
I like that.
Okay, well, we will finish this video for today, and we will be back with you shortly and go on to the next stage of development, which is the animal stage.
Ooh, yes, you're going to love learning about that.
Okay, bye-bye for now.
bye.